Hi beautiful, welcome to my channel. Check out what I have right here with me, and I didn't just get one, I got two of the new Charlotte Tilbury 9-pan palettes. I did a video recently, a will I buy it video if you will, in which I was talking about this release and I was expressing my frustration and disappointment with some aspects of it. But today we are going to dive right in. I'm going to tell you every detail I can think of about these new palettes. I also have a new perspective to bring to you, which we'll discuss as I go. And I am of course going to test out the quality, do some comparisons with other palettes of Charlotte Tilbury, as well as create one look with each one of these palettes so that at the end I can tell you all of my thoughts and opinions in regards to this release after having tested out the product and created looks with it and whatnot. If you guys are excited for this video, don't forget to please give it a thumbs up before you leave. These already launched. I'm going to leave you the link to them down below in the description box of this video in case you end up being interested in purchasing them. And with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Take a look right here at the packaging of these palettes and take a look at the color stories that I went with. This one right here is called Digital Lilac, which I ended up going for because I like that it has a pretty even amount of mattes and shimmers, and I am a sucker for all things burgundy. Like a burgundy eyeshadow in a palette always calls my name, so that's why I went for this one. And then I also went for Emerald Effect, which unfortunately only has two mattes. However, I really like this one because it has a combination of neutral, natural looking brownish shades, and then you get the greens as well. This was one of the most contrasting palettes because majority of them were pretty monotone from this release, so I was excited to test it out. One thing I was curious about was where these palettes were made. Usually Charlotte Tilbury palettes are made in Italy, so I suppose that they were made in Italy, but like since it's such a different release for Charlotte, I did wonder, and I can confirm they are made in Italy. They have an 18-month shelf life, and each one of the eyeshadows inside these palettes weigh 1 gram, so you get 9 grams of product total. As you can see, we do get the classic rose gold packaging from Charlotte Tilbury, but they do have a clear window in the front where you can see the color story of your palette. And here is what it looks like once they are fully out of the box. As you can see, they do have that clear top packaging that a lot of us were complaining about. And then here's what the back of them looks like. I will say they feel not as cheap as a cleared top drugstore palette would feel. I don't have any drugstore palettes in my collection that have a clear front like Revolution Makeup, but I do have this right here from Wet n Wild. It's a blush highlighter duo that has a clear top, and here's what a drugstore clear top would sound like. This is silly, but it's the only way I can kind of prove to you that it feels a bit higher quality, right? And then here's what the Charlotte Tilbury ones sound like. See how it's not as plasticky? I would say this is more like an acrylic top rather than plastic, because it sounds more like what an acrylic container would sound like rather than the cheap plastic ones that we do get from the drugstore. I don't know why I wanted to make that point, but I wanted to make that point because it does feel a little bit better. I wanted to quickly bring on a new perspective to this release and the fact that a lot of people were disappointed, including myself, by the packaging. I was listening to the beautiful and hilarious and just lovely Charlotte Holcroft on her YouTube channel. She did a review on these the other day. Highly recommend you watch her channel, by the way. She's the best, the wittiest. I love her. And she was saying that the marketing on this collection wasn't the best because the product was leaked ahead of time, but that this is an attempt from Charlotte Tilbury to create what would be comparable to the Dior Backstage line. You guys know Dior has a Backstage collection, which is meant for like makeup artists and not the regular consumer. And so this is Charlotte's attempt to kind of recreate that vibe within her own line. So Charlotte Holcroft was talking about how this palette is kind of comparable to the Dior Backstage collection packaging, and I agree, it is. It even sounds the same. I will say though that the one distinction is Dior usually just has their expensive 5-pan palettes that in my opinion don't really have good quality, and then they came out with this, and so it made sense to a lot of people, including myself, even though it does have that clear packaging. It's different for Dior, and it is a higher amount of shades that they gave us and whatnot. Versus within the Charlotte Tilbury line, we have seen in the past palettes that have 12 and 9 pans that are made for consumers. And so I feel like because Charlotte has had those releases in the past, this right here felt a little more like a step back. I wanted to make sure to bring you some size comparisons here on my channel. So first we are going to compare the new 9-pan palette versus a 4-pan palette from Charlotte. Take a look right here side by side at how these palettes look next to one another. There is a bit of a size difference between the shades. Each shade on the 9-pan palette is 1 ounce, and each shade on the 4-pan palette is 1.15 ounces, so you do get a little more. And then I also wanted to make sure to compare these new palettes to this right here, which is the like more luxurious elevated packaging that we're used to from Charlotte, and it's also a 9-pan palette. Granted, there is a price difference. These retail for $75 each, and this is $60. And so take a look right here at what this size comparison looks like side by side. The Beautyverse palette seems a lot bigger and a lot more luxurious, and you do get your big mirror in there. But with that said, I also have to admit that size-wise, per shade, weight-wise, they are the exact same. This also has 1 gram per shadow, just like this has 1 gram per shadow. I must add though that I really love the creamy formula that you get in the Beautyverse palette, but then again, I haven't tried the formula that is in these, so maybe I'll love this one as well. Lastly, here it is compared to the Dior Backstage palettes. Pretty similar. The Dior one does have 1 more gram overall. It has 10 grams total versus 9 grams total, but these two are pretty comparable. Another point that I brought to my live video the other day where we were discussing the new release from Charlotte was that Charlotte's 4-pan palettes seem special, or are special in my opinion, because they sell you on the idea, and I believe that they actually accomplish this, that even if you are completely unexperienced as a makeup wearer, if you've never applied eyeshadow one day in your life before, you are going to be able to create a glamorous Hollywood-like look on yourself at home. And so these not only have 4 beautiful shades that are extremely creamy and extremely easy to use, but they come with instructions on where to apply those shades as well in order for you to recreate a look at home, again, without having any experience at all whatsoever. And so that's what's kind of magical about these. Even if they are $55 for 4 pans, the formula is so creamy and so easy to use that people can accomplish these looks on themselves at home. And I'm saying that as someone who worked for a Charlotte Tilbury counter. I managed the Charlotte Tilbury counter before YouTube was my only job, and that was the way we sold these on the counter. We would apply them on a customer on one eye and show them how to do it themselves at home on the other eye, and it was surprising even to myself that the formulas are so good that you can super easily accomplish your goal on your own, even if you don't even know how to hold the brush right, you know? And I'm not saying you won't be able to do that at all with these new palettes. You might be able to. I haven't tried the formula yet, but maybe because these were created with makeup artists in mind, it kind of loses that do-it-yourself at home brand identity, right? Like Charlotte always sells you on the fact that you can do glamorous Hollywood makeup on yourself at home with her products, and these don't even come with instructions, which we are so used to from Charlotte Tilbury. These 4-pan palettes tell you in the back where to apply each shadow. It says prime, enhance, pop, and smoke. And so that's the way you use them. And her 12-pan palettes, let me grab one to show you, had that same brand DNA on the back, right? You got 4 different color stories, and in each color story you would follow the same steps. So 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, and the steps were prime, enhance, and smoke. Lastly, because I don't want to forget to say anything, that is why they have the clear packaging, because it's made for makeup artists to have these in their makeup kit, and so they don't want to have to go through each palette, opening it to see what color story is where. They just want to be able to like clearly see it through the packaging so that they can shuffle through their collection very quickly and grab what they need. I'm pretty sure I've said everything I wanted to say, so let's go ahead and swatch these. First things first, let's go ahead and swatch the Emerald Effect palette. I'm pretty excited about this shade right here called Diamond Dimension, because in person it looks pretty spectacular. Hopefully it delivers, so let's go ahead and go for it. Ooh, the matte feels very creamy, very creamy. Here are the first 4 shades. Diamond Dimension, very sparkly. It's kind of like an ethereal toppery type shade, but it looks very pretty. Matte Silk. The matte feels, in fact, very silky. Molten, which is a satin. I'm silly, they don't have shade names. I'm just reading to you their formulas. I was like, why are both of those called Molten Satin? So this is also a Molten Satin, but it's just shade 4. Let's keep going. Here are the next 4 shades. So far, everything is very creamy. So this is number 5, which is a Crystal Chrome shade. Number 6, which is a Matte Silk. 7, Crystal Pop. 8, also a Crystal Pop. And then the last shade, which is a Diamond Dimension. So another ethereal toppery shade. Check it out right here. I didn't go over any of these shadows. These are just creamy and pigmented, and so these are my swatches without ever double dipping my finger or anything like that of this Emerald Effect palette. Let's swatch Digital Lilac next. I'm excited for that lilac purple matte shade to see how it performs. Here are the first 4 shades. The first one is a Diamond Dimension shade. Then we have a Matte Silk, which is that lilac-y matte color. Crystal Pop, and number 4 is a Molten Satin right there. Here's the next 4 shades. I love that this one has a lot of mattes. Number 5 is a satin shade. Number 6 is a satin shade. Number 7 is a matte shade. Ooh, this one didn't swatch nicely, or maybe I didn't pick up enough product, I don't know. Number 8 is a Matte Silk. See, this one I definitely know I picked up a lot of product from. I will go ahead and go over this one more time because I want you to be able to see the color. It's just a light mauvey pinky shade. And then let's go for the last one, which is the burgundy that sold me on this palette. And it's of course also a matte. Take a look right there. So here is the Digital Lilac palette swatched. Here's what it looks like next to the other one for comparison. So pretty. Honestly, so far the formulas feel soft and creamy and silky, and they seem like they're going to be very easy to work with, which is exactly what I come to expect from Charlotte Tilbury, and so I hope that's the truth once I start applying these shades. Let me begin by creating a look with the Digital Lilac palette. I am dying to use this shade up here, this lilac purple, so I'm going to blend it right through the crease of my eye up here as my transition shade, and I'm going to tap it on the outer third of my eyelid and just make sure to distribute it nicely all throughout my crease. You know what, I think I can't do 4 looks too with each palette because I have somewhere to go when I finish filming this and I need my shadows to match, okay? But I think I can do, because this one has so many different mattes, maybe I can do 2 looks with this one and 1 look with the one that has the emerald shades. All right, so as you can see, that lilac-y, let me zoom you in. The lilac color is applying smoothly. It's nice and soft. It blended out beautifully. I'm going to switch to a reference number 1, and I'm going to tap on this shade right here. Now, this is not my favorite shade in palettes, this fuchsia pink type situation, but I want to use it so you can see it. Very pigmented, as you can see by tapping. You build up quite a lot of intensity. I'm turning my brush upside down and I am doing little circles on the edge. You know what? I'm going to wipe off my brush on a paper towel because it's very pigmented. And then I'm going to keep blending because I definitely wanted to blend into the lilac, but I didn't want to fully erase the lilac from the crease of the eye. So now it looks a little more intense and pigmented towards the outer half, but you can still see the lilac color towards the front. And as you can see, these are blending pretty nicely. I think I'm going to go into my burgundy color, why not, and add it to the outer third of the eyelid as well. This is the most intense shade in this particular palette. And I'm applying it with the same Refer number 1 brush, just diffusing the top edge real quick. And that is what things are looking like. I'm going to grab this satin shade right here and I'm going to apply it on the outer half of my eyelid towards the mattes. Back here. I'm going to go with this pink fuchsia shade next, and we're going to put this one right in the center of my eyelid, and I'm just tapping it with my finger. This is also one of those satin shades that don't have a lot of oomph. They don't have the glitter, but I will go on with one of the glittery shades, don't worry. So here's what it looks like before we put any of the crystal shades on. I will, however, add this shade right here, which I've been dying to use, right on the inner third of the eyelid, inner corner of the eye as well. I'm bringing it in, blending it down right here. I don't necessarily love this look just because I bought this palette for the burgundies and it does have fuchsia pinks in it. And so since I'm going to do 2 looks with it, I put all of the fuchsia pinks in this look. So I know that I'll like the second look better. But this is what you could come up with if you went with all the pink fuchsia shades in this one. And you could get the matte colors that I put on at first and smoke them underneath the eye to finish it up. I don't like this look. I don't think I'm gonna finish it up because it'll be harder to take off if I do. Let's create another look over here, and I'm pretty sure I'll like it better because I'm going to use the shades that I'm more excited about. So I'm going to start with the Refer number 15, and this time we are going into this mauvey pink shade at the bottom. Also, one thing I might add, while I like the sparkly Diamond Dimension shade right here, I was not a big fan of the satin shades in this one. I don't know, they weren't exciting to me. Are they bad? I don't think they're bad, but they were just kind of meh, you know? That might just be my personal preference interfering though, because I don't usually like satin shades that much anymore. I want my eyeshadows to be sparkly. Blending the mauvey pink shade. This shade reminds me a lot of the Modern Renaissance packaging from the Anastasia palette. Take a look right there. And so because I don't want to use this fuchsia pink matte, I am going to go straight into the burgundy this time. So I'm going to grab my number 1 brush from Refer and tap the burgundy color right on the outer third of the eyelid. Tap, tap, tap it. And then I'm going to start blending it into my previous shade. Back with the Refer number 15, I'm just diffusing both colors into one another. Does that look patchy to you? Because it looks a little patchy to me. And I feel like it's looking a little patchy, so I'm going back with my number 1. Nothing added, just whatever remaining burgundy there's on it. And I am just running it through the crease. And that's what that looks like. Alright, I'm going to go into this shimmer shade right here. This is a Crystal Pop. I'm going to tap it in the center towards the back. This one, see, this one has a little more sparkle than the satins. I like this formula a little better. Now this is still looking very pink. The palette is called Digital Lilac, but there is one lilac color. The rest is pretty pink, in my opinion. Actually 2 lilac colors, because the sparkly shade that I put in the inner corner here, also pretty lilac, but the rest of it is just kind of fuchsia. I'm finishing it up with the number 1 shade, which is the sparkly lilac. Can you tell I'm a little disappointed? Because I am. And so take a look right here at what this looks like. Once again, not loving it. So I'm not going to finish the under eye because it would just irritate my eyes to take off the under eye as well. I wanted lilac, and there is very little that is lilac about either of these looks right here. So I'm a little disappointed. Maybe I should have gone with the Cool Tone palette, which is the one that I wanted initially, instead of this one. Let's hope that the Emerald Effect palette is better. I'm an optimist, so I think it will be. Time for the Emerald palette, and this one only has 2 mattes and they're both brown, so that's what we're going to start with. Blending those matte browns on the crease of the eye. This is a reference number 15 brush I grabbed just to blend the first matte color all throughout the crease. Just back and forth, and the outer corner as well. Just back and forth with my blending brush. And I did prime my eyes, by the way. I used my Rare Beauty eyeshadow primer this time. I've been blending the shade for a while and I feel like it's pretty smooth now, but I can still see like a little bit of patchiness throughout, and this is definitely not what I've been used to from Charlotte in the past. Her shades used to blend super easily, blend like butter, and I don't know, I feel like, is it super noticeable? No, but I see a little patchiness right back there that isn't necessarily quickly going away. I've been blending for a while. I'm going to use the darker mattes and just tap it on the outer third of the eyelid back here. And I don't want it to go super high into the crease, so just lightly I'm blending it into my first shade with the tip of the reference number 1 brush. Repeating the same steps on this side, of course. Once again, not as smooth as I want to make it. I want to pick the very best colors from this palette to showcase to you in this video, so we're not using the satin shades like this one or that one. Boring. We're not doing that. I want to go for the greens, I want to go for the steel, I want to go for this sparkle. I think I'm going to do this one and that one, because if I go for the warmer greens, then I'm not going to be able to show you this shade, and I love this shade. I made a hole on it just swatching it earlier. It's super soft. So I'm going to go this one on the outer half, this one on the inner half, and this one on the inner corner. This is a Crystal Pop shade, so it'll have some sparkle in it, which I am excited about. And I'm applying it with my finger on the outer half of the eyelid, just tapping it and swiping it a bit towards the matte colors. Then I'm going into the teal shade, and once again with my finger applying it on the inner half of the eyelid. This one's very pretty. The Diamond Dimension formulas in the palettes have been the ones that I've been most excited about. These have not disappointed. The satins are kind of meh. Even the mattes I think are a little iffy, but the Diamond Dimension shades are bomb. And I'll fix the top, don't worry, it's just messily applied right now because I'm applying it with my finger. But for my inner corner, I'm going to go with a brush in this color, which is another Diamond Dimension shade, and I'm going to put it on the inner corner, and then I'm going to smooth out right up here with it, just carefully back and forth. And the same thing over here. Back with a tiny bit more of the dark matte color, just patting it where the shimmers meet the mattes. And with a pencil brush, I'm going to go back to the dark matte shade, and we are going to smoke out my lower lash line. I'm going about halfway in under my eyes. Lastly, reference number 14 and the lighter matte color, and we are fully smoking out my lower lash line with it. Even though the mattes did not perform the way I expected them to perform, I honestly expected them to blend easier. This look I do really like. It looks really pretty. I love all of the shimmery, glimmery shades on my eyelids. Brown eyeliner for the waterline. Well, this is the shade Cocoa from Laura Mercier, which is a warmer brown eyeliner. We're going with it. I thought this was espresso. My bad. I'm going to apply mascara and some lashes to finish up this look, and I'm going to be back to tell you my final thoughts on what I tried today. Back and the makeup is fully finished. I must say, I love the sparkles in this eyeshadow look. Things are shiny, which I really love. I think I did have a bit more trouble than I was expecting with the matte shade, especially for being Charlotte Tilbury, but the eyeshadow look ended up coming out very nicely. So let me give you guys my final thoughts on this collection. Coming into this video, I was really hopeful. I was very excited. I was being very optimistic about really loving these palettes, and I didn't hate them. However, I don't think that these are the traditional super buttery, extremely easy to use formula that I personally have been so used to from Charlotte Tilbury. You can watch like the dozens of videos I've done on Charlotte Tilbury eyeshadows, and I'm always raving about how easy to use the formula is. There was a time there that I would rave about Pat McGrath glitter and shimmer shades, but I would always tell you guys Charlotte Tilbury has the easiest to use formula, and unfortunately I don't think that that is the case for the formula in these particular palettes right here. This is not a formula. Remember at the beginning when I told you the whole thing with the quads and them being expensive was that you could literally create a Hollywood glamorous inspired look at home without having any prior knowledge of how to apply eyeshadow, without even knowing how to hold a brush. You could recreate these looks at home on your own with zero experience. Well, I just don't think that that is the case with these Charlotte Tilbury 9-pan palettes. And I get it, they're made for makeup artists, so the formula maybe is different because of that, but I have really loved throughout the years the Charlotte Tilbury formula that we have gotten since the brand started. The formula that is in the quads, the formula that is in her 12-pan palettes, and even the formula that is in palettes like this Beautyverse palette right here, because even though this formula is different and this palette is not the instruction based palette that Charlotte was releasing before these, this is still a formula that is extremely easy to use, and that even if you had zero experience with makeup, you could very easily apply at home. I wholeheartedly believe that, and once again, I just don't think that that is the case for these new Charlotte Tilbury 9-pan palettes. Is it a super patchy, super hard to work with, difficult formula? Absolutely not. The mattes are nice and pigmented and they blend fairly well. I did have a bit more trouble blending them into each other than I thought I would, but that is because I was expecting what Charlotte has given us in the past, and it's not what we got here today. Like I said, I don't really care about the satin shades in the palette, but I do really like both the Diamond Dimension formulas, which is the very sparkly ethereal formula, and I also really like the Crystal Pop formula that is in these palettes. With all of that said, would I recommend these? Keep in mind, these are $60 9-pan palettes, and if we look at the overall market, we can compare these palettes to palettes like the Natasha Denona palettes, which are $68, so they're $8 more. However, you get bigger single shadows. These all weigh more than a gram. You get 6 extra shadows, and you get formulas that are, in my opinion, better than the formulas in these 9-pan palettes. I couldn't tell you this formula is better than the formulas we used to get from Charlotte's 12-pan palette, or I couldn't tell you that these formulas are better than a lot of formulas in the quads. I feel like they're comparable, they're similar, but I do believe that the formulas in the Natasha Denona palettes are better than the formulas in these new 9-pan palettes from Charlotte Tilbury. Like I said, these are just not as easy to use, as easy to work with as past formulas that Charlotte Tilbury has released. So I don't think I would recommend these. I would go with something like this instead, if I'm going to be honest with you. And I do have plenty of videos on Natasha Denona palettes on my channel. If anyone's interested, highly recommend. Not the biggest fan of this new release from Charlotte Tilbury personally, which is honestly unfortunate because Charlotte Tilbury is one of those brands that I always want to root for. So when something comes out that I'm not 100% in love with, I personally am always disappointed. But those are my thoughts on this release. If you guys liked today's video, don't forget to please give it a thumbs up. Before you leave, please let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, and do not leave without having subscribed to my channel. I love you all so much. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you back in the next video. Bye.